I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fires in LA. But I don't want to just talk about the obvious. I'm hearing everybody out there who's a gun advocate talk about how, see, there's looters. And you're right. You're absolutely right. But I don't want to parrot that. We all know that. I wanted to go a little bit deeper and get a little bit more complex, a little bit more sophisticated on it. The fires in LA. Of course, we're all truly sorry for the victims. I mean, it's sad, it's tragic, it's horrible. I'm sure that the loss of property that those folks are feeling is unbearably horrible. And the loss of life, which there has been, is absolutely unbearably horrible. And I truly, hearts go out to them, and I'm so sorry for what they're going through. Just going through that kind of thing, I'm just so sorry for everyone. So it's been talked about to death. We all know that the hydrants weren't full and the mayor was on a trip. We all know all that stuff. One reporter even got criticized. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he was criticized for, he was wearing a yellow fireman's jacket. And so he'd look better on TV. He actually cinched the back of it so it was a little bit more form-fitting. So, I mean, we've all heard these criticisms, over and over and over again. But this is what I think I can add. Being the organization we are, the political organization, we only focus on Second Amendment, but we're still at the heart and foundation of a political organization. First, why are people being flippant or cold towards the victims just because they're in LA? Well, that's easier to understand than most people probably think, and I wanted to talk about it. In the last few years, we've seen a number of disasters. Fires in Maui, the hurricanes in North Carolina. We've seen a number of things. But the coverage of those catastrophes, not handled like the coverage in LA. Specifically, we're seeing story after story, and interview after interview by famous actors and their feelings on the matter and that sort of thing. The actors are criticizing the local and state government for everything and, that went wrong. I'm seeing quotes from these actors that we're used to seeing on TV and movies, and they're criticizing their local government, their mayor, their governor about what went wrong. It makes them look completely out of touch. When something horrible and horrific happens in Maui, when something horrible and horrific happens in North Carolina, and nobody really cares. Maybe there are a minor coverage or whatever, but the other part of it is the rest of the country is sitting back and looking and going, hey, wait a minute, these are the political leaders, and they have the political philosophy that you keep telling us is the right way, is the moral way. And now when something actually does happen, when you need leadership, you're standing up and criticizing and wanting to be the center of attention. In Maui, you didn't see them quoting, Kimo Aliamanu over and over and plastering his story all over social media. You didn't see that. You didn't see in North Carolina, you didn't see them interviewing, Bubba Wilson about how horrible it is that he lost his entire life because of this hurricane, that he has no insurance, he has no savings account, and now he has no job. Why? Because, and those, of course, are names I just made up, but neither one of those people are people that we've seen on TV or people that we've seen on the movies. And that difference is, it's something that people pick up on. It's something that people can't relate to. It's something that marginalizes people. It's something that makes the general public go, hey, wait a minute, what about me? Especially when, like I said, these people for the last 2 years have been telling half the country that the person they want to vote for is the equivalent of a horrible dictator, and that they're immoral for wanting, the government that'll actually, number one, be competent. So that's number one. But let's talk about the actual government. I think this is something where we can actually add to the conversation because this really is our area of expertise. We're a political organization first, like I said. We concentrate on the Second Amendment, but we're political. So let's talk about the actual politics. There's been a trend in the last, I'm going to say 10 years or so, that's been increasing and getting worse and worse. People are running for city council and suddenly under the impression that they're somehow on a world stage. They're weighing in on foreign wars, and they're weighing in on these cultural issues or social issues that a city council has nothing to do with. The city council, as we know it, is actually a very American invention. They actually came out in the late 1800s, and they really started to take off in the early 1900s. The reason for a city council was a town would form around some kind of central economic driver, especially in the West. It was usually formed around something like a mine. You know, they were mining some kind of gold or some kind of other product or whatever, or a factory or a port or a river or something. And what they now needed is support for that business, right? So they have, say, a mine, right? And you have, well, the miners need to live somewhere and the miners need to shop somewhere. So then, boom, this little mini economy would pop up. Well, in order to get to that economy, you need certain things. You need some kind of infrastructure. And because we're the government of the self-governed, you know, we're the country of the self-governed in the United States, the first time that's ever been tried in human history. They had to figure it out. They didn't have a king that could swoop in and say, hey, I'm going to decree that this has to happen. No, they had to figure it out. So they got together, you know, because they needed, basically they needed, what do they need? They need roads, right? Because you got to get to and from these businesses. They needed protection, you know, some kind of law enforcement. They needed medical. They needed their garbage removed, and they needed their clean water delivered. And they needed fires to be put out. Those are the basic needs. If you go to some small town, you know, Tombstone, Arizona, and look back at what do they need after they have this economic center, what do they need? Well, that's what they need. And that's the entire point of a city council. That is their job. And it's not negotiable. You know, they don't get to decide what their job is next year, you know, and that it's different next year than it was. And that's exactly still why they exist. A lot of city councils are speaking up and they're making statements. And listen, I'm all for standing up for the marginalized. I'm 100% in favor of giving a voice to those who simply don't have one. In fact, that's a big part of my job. But not until after the real functions of city councils are handled. Potholes in roads, emergency services like cops and firefighters, water, garbage collection. That's the measure of success. That's a city council's job. Once those are completely run flawlessly and there's still time left on your schedule, then by all means, city council members, make a statement about the marginalized. But if you run out of water and your house is burned down and you had to flee because nobody was there to help you and direct you, nobody cares about the marginalized, including the marginalized. If the marginalized are losing their house because the city council isn't doing their job, then even the marginalized don't care about the marginalized. In fact, the fundamental service that a city council is responsible helps citizens, helps the marginalized far more than the rich. You know, the rich don't need that help as much as the marginalized. So what I'm saying is you'll see these non-binding resolutions where they give these opinions, or they have so-and-so or such and such day, or they give all this funding to a group that supports some other, you know, again, some other marginalized community, whatever it is, whatever it's based on, you know, whatever it's based on. But then you can't deliver water. You can't fund your fire department. You can't fill potholes. Then nothing else matters. And oh, by the way, those same marginalized groups are the ones that are suffering. They're the ones that are suffering. So when we pick people, yeah, we pick people based on Second Amendment. That's our litmus test. That's our first litmus test. But one of the things I'm very proud about when it comes to San Diego County gun owners and Orange County gun owners and Inland Empire gun owners is we also look at the content of their character. We look at are they capable of doing the job? Are they proficient and good at doing the job? We're looking at electing or hiring, in effect, is what you're doing, more competent people. So, you know, yeah, cities like LA, like all the different cities in LA, they'd pass these non-binding resolutions about Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine. It has absolutely nothing to do with their city government. absolutely nothing to do with their city government. Meanwhile, their reservoirs were empty, their hydrants were empty, their firefighters, at least the leadership in the firefighter department, was inept. And that's not me saying they're inept. She's been fired. The mayor fired her right in the middle of this catastrophe. So, the issue of diversity has become a really hot issue lately. And it really occurred to me how the two sides see the issue clearly when I was watching an interview it was actually an interview of Elon Musk by Don Lemon. Don Lemon used to work for CNN, pretty biased reporter. He got fired by CNN because of the way he treats people. I'm not going to get into all that, but he basically got let go from CNN. He made his way over to Twitter or X, and then one of his big first interviews was Elon Musk. Elon Musk and Don Lemon disagree with each other on most things, but I wanted to show a conversation about DEI, and I wanted to talk about how the two sides, let's call it the pro-DEI and the anti-DEI sides, they see the issue completely different. They talk past each other. So let's go ahead and show that clip.
Okay, so listen, let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, all right? That's been a target of yours lately on X. There was a repost of Ben Shapiro that you claim that DEI is killing people. Specifically, you point to medicine. You claim that DEI programs are putting people at risk. Do you really believe this to be true, and what evidence do you have to support it?
What I was referring to there was that if we lower the standards for doctors, such so that they, if the test for a doctor is lowered, then the probability of them making a mistake and killing someone is obviously going to be higher.
Wait, say that again. I'm not sure I understand what you said. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yes, if the standards for passing medical exams and becoming a doctor, or especially something like a surgeon, if the standards are lowered, then the probability that the surgeon will make a mistake is higher. They're making mistakes in their exam. They may make mistakes with people, and that may result in people dying.
What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
There's no evidence of that, Elon. What is the evidence?
I believe they have literally lowered the standards at Duke University, and that is what the article was referring to.
There's no evidence.
Saying they have not lowered the standards?
There's no evidence about lowering standards, and I think that there is.
Leave that as a false statement you're making.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out.
If the standards are lowered, okay, now I don't care where you stand on Don Lemon. I don't really particularly like the guy. Doesn't matter where you stand on Elon Musk, and it doesn't even really matter where you stand on DEI. That's not the point of this conversation. If the standards are lowered, the point of this conversation is that you have two people who are well-versed in the subject, and they're talking past each other. They're trying to, I don't understand, what you're saying, Elon Musk, and he doesn't understand why it's not clear to him what he's saying. So Don Lemon went on to say that there were already black and brown pilots and doctors, and Elon Musk looked confused. So Elon Musk is saying, hey, if we do this DEI thing, you're lowering the standards. Excuse me. So here's the disconnect. Those against the idea of putting an emphasis on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, usually those folks are on the political right. They think that if someone is the best for the job, they'll get the job, regardless of heritage, skin color, et cetera, et cetera.
So is this the litmus test to see if we're right, left, or center? Because I know where I stand right now.
In some ways, yeah, well, those who are supportive of DEI, usually those on the political left, just think that if someone is qualified, they should get the job. And the difference lies in the difference between those two words, best and qualified. So those, excuse me, that are pro-DEI, they think, hey, if they've taken the classes, they've gotten the training, then everybody in this pool is equally qualified. Everybody in this pool of candidates for a job is equally qualified. Where if you're against the idea of DEI, you tend to look at it as, hey, there is a best and a second best and a third best and a fourth best. And what's interesting about that is folks on the right tend to be more individualistic. Folks on the left tend to be more collective. And that's exactly how they're looking at this DEI. So he's saying, look, I don't want to lower the standards. And Don's going, wait a minute, just by hiring someone who's black or brown is lowering the standards, as if that's what is meant by his lowering the standards. It's just the fact that they're black or brown. It's not what he's saying. He's saying, hey, look, they're hiring the best people for the job. They have 10 openings. They're going to hire the 10 best people for this job. And it doesn't matter if they're black, white, or whatever. So if in the top 10, if in the top 10, somebody, of those 10 are not black or brown, well, then they got to go, well, then we got to go to the 11th best, the 12th best, the 13th best, or whoever. Because otherwise, they'd be in that top 10%. It has nothing to do with their skin color. It has nothing to do with their heritage. So that's the disconnect. They're looking and they're saying, hey, look, we need a fire chief in L.A.? Okay, well, we got like 50 people that could be the chief. All of them are equally as good. So let's pick the one that fills some boxes. Let's give somebody else a chance. Kind of the undertone of that is that they aren't given a chance because of their gender, their sexuality, their whatever it is, their heritage. But the reality is there's somebody who is best for that job. And that's who the non-DEI folks want picked for that job. And I think that these fires in LA clearly illustrated that. It's clear that the best person was not picked to be the chief of the fire department. And that's not just me talking. That's the actual mayor of LA who fired her. And I think that's the disconnect. That's why people are kind of talking past each other. That's why when you say, I just want the best person for the job, and the other side is saying, well, you're just a bigot or a racist or whatever. You're mean. You're a horrible person. So the right sees the job pool as a contest. There is the best of the job, and then it goes down from there. The left sees everyone in there as equally qualified. Hey, they've done the classes, they've done the certifications, so they're all equally qualified. The pilot that crashes 3 times in the simulator, but, we'll pass him, her, whatever anyway. The doctor that failed their exams, but let's give them a medical degree and show how supportive we are. It's truly a difference in philosophy. And know that it's a great way to explain this to people. When you're sitting down talking to people, explaining to them that, hey, you know what? Everyone's not equally qualified, even though they've had the same training. Rather than explain to them or get into an argument or whatever, explain to them, hey, you know what? I want the best person for the job. And here's what I mean by the best person, the person that can do the job, that can execute the job perfectly. And I don't care what that means. I love the idea that government is sticking up for the vulnerable and the marginalized. I really, truly do. And again, I think that's a big part of what I do is I give gun owners, people want to defend themselves. I give them a voice. San Diego County gun owners is that voice. But not until after they do that job. And their job is not to expand DEI. It's to make sure they do the basic functions of government. And that's something I really wanted to emphasize on these fires. What do you guys think? Any thoughts, Gary?
I agree with you
Right?
that the left thinks in a collectivist way and the right thinks in an individualist way. It is a philosophy of government in California, and it's kind of unusual for people in other states to look at our state and think that gun owners are a marginalized class.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that people in other states are just astonished at. Mm-hmm. Certainly my friends in other states are astonished at the heavy hand of the state that leans on gun owners in every facet of their life: possession, purchase, carry.
I got to tell you, you're one of the few that understands it, or probably better understands it than most people in San Diego, because you defend those marginalized people.
I do, many of them.
The people who are targeted by the law because they're gun owners, who are doing something that's normal in the rest of the country, you're one of the people that defends them. And again, what do you do with this information? I think a lot of people are going to walk away and they're going to go from this LA situation and they're going to say, hey, this is why you need a gun in case there's rioters or looters. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be convinced by that. I do think people can be convinced who don't agree with you, on the idea that, hey, we need competent government. Because even folks on their side right now are saying, yeah, okay, we need competent government. You know, I'm all for DEI, but, you know, I'm even more marginalized when my house burns down. So,
You know, like, going back to what you were saying at the beginning too, it's like the importance of understanding when these people, when they run for office, these officials, they run for whatever position they're running for. They got to keep in mind, they got to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, they have a position, they are selected through whatever process to do a particular job. And they might have great, grandiose ideas, really great suggestions on how to make other things better, but their focus needs to be what they were hired to do.
Exactly.
And when they expand that, you know, you can only do so many things well. If you try to go too broad and you're outside your lane of what you're supposed to be doing, you're ignoring your job.
yeah, as long as there's a pothole.
And you're diluting out. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as there's a pothole on Claremont Mesa Boulevard,
Right.
I don't care about what your opinion of Israel and Hamas is.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter where you stand on Russia and Ukraine. You know, I don't care what you think about, you know, what we should do with DEI until I know that the fireman is going to show up when my house is burning down and he's going to actually have water and the tools he needs. Anyway, that's my rant. That's the first thing that came across, and I didn't just want to repeat the idea that I completely agree with, you know, that you're your own first responder, so you got to be able to defend yourself when there are looters, but I wanted to go in a different
I
direction.
have a quick question, though.
Yes, ma'am.
When did DEI become, when was it formed? When did that begin? Because I personally didn't hear about it until the whole Trump, the assassination attempt and you know, the failure of that. Like when did DEI really become integrated?
A thing.
And used? Yeah.
You know, there's actually a guy I really like a lot named Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, and he's was a professor at NYU, and he's kind of he's done a number of things that I like very much. But one of the things he is doing currently is he's tracking the history of woke. And a part of that is this DEI's kind of been, you know, predates it, but the real modern big push about 2012. There's actually he's kind of narrowed it down to an incident that you can still find on the internet where a bunch of college kids they said they wanted some people punished because they wore Halloween costumes that were offensive. And this professor's like, what are we doing? Like, what, you know? And he was actually,
Yale.
Was it Yale?
Yeah.
He was actually a fairly left-wing professor. And he's just like, what are you talking? Like, you're adults now. And they sat there in this quad at Yale and berated him and yelled at him and lectured him. And Jonathan Haidt, this professor, this researcher, has kind of said, hey, that's ground zero. That's when this thing really kicked off. So I'd say within the last, 10 years, it's really taken off. Wow. So anyway.
Second term of Obama, really, you know, weaponizing first term of Trump.
Okay.
So I think if you're arguing about DEI, I think going the route of competence, you know, and what's going on in government with LA and what happened there, I think it's a better angle than, than some of the other angles I've seen. So anyway, thank you guys again. Truly, if you can send some money to the folks in LA, great. You know, there are definitely a lot of people in need. There are a lot of first responders that need things. There's a ton of criticism. Gary, you and I were talking before. I think Newsom's career is done as far as moving up to federal.
Well, we're stuck with him for another 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't see any successful recall movement occurring in the next 2 years because it's only 2 years.
Yeah, we already tried that.
But hopefully this drives a stake through the heart of that chameleon's ambitions for president.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael from Gun Owners Radio. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and make a comment. Help us out. Go to gunownersradio.com. Thanks for watching.